Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's success story interview, where we have the pleasure of speaking with Meher. Thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate you taking the time. Can you give us a little bit of background on your residency match, like the specialty you got into in the program?
Yes. So thank you so much to Matter Resident for having me on today. I applied in the 2021 cycle for psychiatry predominantly. That's what I wanted to match into. And that's eventually what I did match into. But I also applied
Nice.
to internal medicine as a parallel specialty, just a couple of programs in states that I really wanted to be in. And then focusing mainly on the bulk of my application on psychiatry. So that's kind of what I was doing and what I ended up matching in. But I think the journey to that day and the journey to that process has been really long, and lots of components weren't really going according to plan. So that's why I was very grateful that I had this opportunity to share in case anybody else was kind of in a similar situation and needed a little of encouragement along the way.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you mean in terms of like the obstacles and things not necessarily going to
Yeah.
plan?
So typically when everyone thinks of residency, you do 4 years of medical school. In your third year of medical school, you finish your clinical rotations, then you get ready to apply for residency, and then you match, and then it's like the perfect little 4-year plan that everybody had. So for me, I went to St. George's University in the Caribbean.
Mhm.
Um, and you do 2 years on the island the first 2 years, and then you come back to America to do the next 2 years in whichever state you choose or wherever they place you. So
Mhm.
one of the classes on the island, I actually didn't end up passing, so I had to redo that course.
Wow.
And because of the way the semesters are positioned, it was just one class, but I had to wait an entire summer to take it, and then I took the class, and then so it put me back essentially a whole year. So I should have graduated in 2020, but I actually graduated in 2021. And that's something the program actually that I matched into asked me. They were like, oh, we see that you took 5 years, like what happened? So I mean, it's not a big deal if you just kind of explain it, but I think a lot of people don't talk about that. I know initially when it happened, when I found out that I had to repeat, I was like, oh my God, embarrassed. Just you think it's like never gonna end. What's gonna happen with you with match and things like that. So
Can I
um
ask you something real
yeah.
quick? Did you put that in your ERIS application where they say, was your medical school education extended or interrupted?
Yes,
And
yes.
can you share about like how you address that in that
Correct.
specific
So
part?
one tip I have, do not lie on that application. So whatever happened is just say it. You can frame it in a nicer way. You don't have to tell them like the absolute things to the detail, but don't lie where if there was a gap, don't say there was not a gap. Just explain
Of
what
course.
happened. So I said yes, it was extended, and I put my dates that I took to graduate, and then I said that I can actually read it out. I have it somewhere, but I basically said that I wasn't doing well in my pathophysiology course. And at the same time, like my parents still live in India. So I said that we thought that my father may be sick. So I think just the emotional instability compiled with the academics that I wasn't doing well academically, I just decided that instead of trying to pass the course and take that final exam, I just credit remediated the class. So there's no fail on your transcript. It just says CR. And then I would just mentally prepare to come back once I had spent time with my family over the summer. And then eventually it prepared me well for step one. And that's how I framed it. And only one interview asked me. So,
Okay. Seems like
but
it was a good explanation then that it satisfied what they wanted to
yeah,
see and
yeah,
understand.
yeah. So just say something, tell the truth, but you can always frame it in a nicer way. You don't have to say that, oh, I was confused, I didn't want to study anymore. Like, don't say that. Say something that ties in a little bit of what was going on in your life at the moment, so people can empathize a little bit more and understand.
Mhm.
you know so yeah, that was one of the obstacles. And then I mean, in spite of I did that, I took the extra year, but I still didn't do well on step one. I think my basics in the first 2 years of medical school were really weak. I don't know. SG was a big school. I don't want to blame it on them, but it takes a while for you to find your rhythm, find what way of studying works for you. And I think it took me a little bit longer than most people to figure it out. Maybe I wasn't as focused, as clear as what medical school was like when I started. I think that was another big thing. So I didn't do well on step one. I got a 205, which is basically passing. I
Yeah.
think 197 is passing, so I got 205. And so now I was just so defeated. I was like, okay, great. So now I've taken 5 years. I can't even say that it helped me because I didn't do well on step one. So
Hmm.
that was a little bit hard. And then I was like, okay, but something's gonna, I knew I would do better in clinicals because I would see the pathology. I would understand what's going on. And the step two exam is very different from the step one exam. It's all clinical, so every question is about a patient, about a problem. And then I studied like there was no tomorrow for each shelf exam for step two, and then I was able to increase my score to 232 on step two. So that's
Okay,
about a
great.
30-point jump. And after that I felt much more at ease. I was like, okay, like now I at least now I feel like I deserve to apply, and I feel like I'm worthy of getting a spot for residency, because before I was like, oh, this is not looking good. So I did 232, and then I applied for residency, and then I got in. So the 5 years, the poor step one score, it all worked out in the end. But I think a lot of people, no one shares those stories. Everyone's like, yeah, 240 step one, 255 step two, and I matched. Like, okay,
Right.
well, obviously you're going to match. So that's kind of why I wanted to share what happened.
And was there anything that particularly helped with your studying for Step 2 CK? It sounded like you were just, more focused and dedicated to the studying for it, but was there anything in particular?
Yeah, so I just did, people always said you have to do questions, and I always was like, I'm doing the questions. What does everybody mean by do more questions? And it wasn't until step two when I realized that, okay, I had done enough questions. I think you have to, I only used UWorld. Like I did UWorld about 3 or 4 times before step two. I had a dedicated study period of about 6, 7 months because the lockdown just started. So there was no distractions. And I just, like every question, every just, I had my system, I had my PowerPoint presentation, my UWorld open, whatever I didn't know, I would put onto a slide somewhere. And then every time I got a question wrong on that same topic, I would go back, edit that information, really make sure I knew everything about that one topic,
Mm-hmm.
and just doing questions over and over again. And but at the same time connecting it with questions you've done before. I also had a study partner, my friend Anna, who I met during step one prep. We both didn't do well on step one, so we both kind of had a lot to prove. And she went up to our step twos are very similar, so we studied together. Quizzed each other, whatever. Like, because I tend to get overconfident and lazy, so I'm like, oh, I knew this, I knew this. It's fine. I'll just learn it later. But you need somebody to tell you, like, no, Meher, you really don't know this. You need to study this now. So she would be that person for me, and I would be that person for her. Or we would find easy ways to remember stuff. We would quiz each other, and we lived together, so we would quiz each other when we were like walking to the car or something like that. um, you have to really be dedicated and have find what works. And I think eventually I found what worked for me. It's just that it took me so long to get there. I
Mm-hmm.
tried the whiteboarding, I tried the flashcards, like that's just not how I study. So I once you figure out what works for you, I think it's easier to do well with that system in place.
And did you include any of these obstacles in your personal statement as well? Did you address the extension or your scores, or you just kind of focused mostly on the specialty itself?
Yeah, no, I did the essay. I mean, this is so like, I don't think you need to mention it. I mean, people get it. Like, they'll see it on your transcript, they'll see it in the ERAS application. There's no need for them to read an essay just about how you struggled academically. Like, they don't. That's
Mhm.
not interesting. That's not anything unique. I wrote about. I just wrote about why I wanted to do psych. I'm trying to think about what exactly was in my personal statement. I think I just talked about, I connected it to like when I was growing up, we always had tea time. I think my mom being like, I didn't realize how much therapy she kind of provided for me growing up, how kids don't have that. And then I tied that into why I want to do child psych. So I just wrote about that. It was very like personal, something that I think a lot of people don't have, a lot of families don't have growing up. But there was no mention of my academic mishaps or extensions or gaps or poor step one, like
Mhm.
nothing.
So when it came to interviews, where do
Yeah.
you think the majority of your interviews came from when their invitations were coming in?
Yes. So, okay. So I think so. I went through this whole journey, the 205, the 232. I thought I was in a good place to get interviews. I thought I was going to have no problem. So but that was not the case. The interview season started. Everybody was getting at least 1, 2 interviews. I didn't hear anything till about November, December.
Mhm.
And everyone kept saying that, oh, the US med students get the interviews first, then they go to the IMGs. I was like, okay, but like we're running out of time. I had to basically get myself each interview, and people are like, well, you're not supposed to contact programs. You don't have the luxury to not listen to that. If you are coming from a Caribbean med school with poorer step 1 step 2 scores, you don't have you cannot just sit and wait for the interviews to come to you. You have to go get them. So what does that mean? So I had friends who were residents at programs, basically anybody I knew in the medical profession, whether it was a distant cousin to a friend I don't talk to anymore. I just messaged everybody, like sent an email to everybody, messaged everybody, including the program directors of programs I really wanted to interview at. And
Mhm.
you're not going to hear back from a lot of people, but you will from some people. So whoever could help me in whatever regard, they did that. So I had a cousin who did residency in New York a long time ago. He was still friends with his surgery residency program coordinator. That program coordinator, after he reached out, was like, wait, I know the psych coordinator. So she reached out to the psych coordinator. Then next thing you know, I get an email from that program saying that, hey, you have an interview. So
Wow.
you, and some can be like, oh, well, that's just unprofessional. I don't think it's unprofessional. I think that you do not have the luxury to sit and wait. So whatever you can do to get the interviews, you do it. I had a retired family friend who was a physician like a long time ago. I just reached out to him. I was like, do you know anybody at these 167 programs that I applied to, and you never know what works. So every interview that I got, I basically had to scramble and make those interviews happen. I
Mhm.
got a total of 5 interviews, out of which only one interview I got without finding some connection. So only one interview came to me like just naturally through ERAS.
Yeah.
Everything else had to go through a couple of people to get to. And then out of those 5, one program had already pre-matched people by the time I interviewed. So I only ranked 4.
Wow.
So I was very ready to soap and like not match, but then it worked out. So we didn't have to go that route.
And how did you decide where to apply when you started applying?
Yes. So I used the SGU rank match list from like 7, 8 years ago. I went through the entire match list and I just highlighted everybody who had matched in psychiatry, and I made sure all those programs were on the list. And then I
Mhm.
bought the match a resident psychiatry like folder. So I filtered it, filters from like the where you were most likely going to match to where you're least likely. And I just took like I took to from 100% to about 80%, 70% is kind of where I cut it off because there were so many programs. And then I just combined this list with the SGU list, and then I made the list together.
Is there anything that you would have done differently if you had to apply again?
Yes, yes. So everyone says, oh, you're not supposed to reach out to program directors. You're not supposed to, contact them, which I guess is true after you've submitted your application. But what I really regret not doing is reaching out to them way before. So if the application starts
Mhm.
in September, in June or July, the programs that you really want for whatever reason, location, reputation, research, whatever, you need to email them in like June or July in summertime when they're a little bit more relaxed. They haven't really thought about the next cycle, but they're kind of wondering, I wonder who's going to apply. You need to email them there, write a really nice email, who you are, what you're interested in, and see if you can connect with them. The You don't understand how much that helps, because once they know you and they kind of have been communicating with you through email, when you actually apply, they will find your application and pull it out, because you may get filtered for whatever reason. Let's say my step 1 score filtered me out of a lot of programs. If that program director knew me and he had me on his email, if I had emailed him like, hey, remember we chatted, can you see why I haven't got an then he'll be like, oh yeah, this girl, she messaged me, she really wants to come here, let me pull her out of that filter and give her an interview. So nobody tells you these things, like what's going on, and they get so many emails and so many applications once that September mark starts, that
Mhm.
then it's a lost cause. So if I were you, June and July is when you should really make an effort. Not a lot, maybe 5, 6, 10 programs you really like. Send a thoughtful email to each one why you would really want to go there, and just build some connection, connect over something, a hobby, things you like doing, I don't know, and then they'll remember you and then hopefully give you an interview later on.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice.
Mhm.
Is there anything in particular you're hoping to bring to the field of psychiatry? I know you mentioned child psychiatry. How are
Yeah.
you hoping to, evolve with your career as you progress through your training?
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't think I was gonna do psych. I feel like when people think of psychiatrists, they think of, very quiet and thoughtful and, kind of more older generation psychiatrists who kind of that's kind of I think what people think, or somebody who's personally had to go through a battle with mental health. So felt very I still feel a little like I was like, oh, how am I going to make this something that I really want to do? But my interest in psych is very clear. It's the only field that kind of actually gets to the root of the problem. I can give you diabetes medication, I can fix your hernia, I can do all that, but like if your mind is not really there, if you still don't want to be alive right now, then all of that stuff doesn't really matter. So for me, that's why I wanted to do psych. It was the only field where I felt like it was me and my patient, and we were going to fix these problems together, whether that was through medication or therapy or talking. And there was more responsibility on my shoulders to ensure my patient does better. And that's something that I liked. Um, I do want to work with children in the future because I think problems that can be solved now, and if they can have a better life in the future, that to me would be very satisfying to see them grow and help them. And there's so many kids in this day and age who need them. So that's kind of what I hope to bring. But eventually I do want to have my private practice, so I'm more involved in my patient care. The patients feel free that they can come to me any time of the day for an appointment, just to talk. That they have their person. If when things go bad, they're like, I just need to call Dr. Irani and talk to her, and we'll figure this out. That's what I want for my patients going forward.
Amazing. Is there any way that people can stay in contact with you as you continue your training and progress through your career?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of, because I know there's lots of like people on Instagram for internal medicine and for other medical specialties. I wanted to do something, maybe like a day in the life of a psychiatry resident, because people don't know like how much medicine do you do, what is it actually like. So you can follow me on Instagram. It's just at Meher Irani, so MEHERIRANI. And I think I need to get more active on there and actually figure out a plan of posting, and just so that because I didn't know I wanted to do psych either, and there were very few psychiatrists that I could actually reach out to and find out about fellowships and stuff, and then research obviously that I did on my own. But if I can provide some like more insight into the field, I think then that would be really great for people who are thinking about doing it.